Alright guys, now it's time to add some post-processing effects, and in my opinion this is where it gets a little more fun. Post-processing is kind of fun to mess around with once you get the hang of it. So we already added our post-process volume. We used it to balance out the exposure, and we already made it unbound, so it doesn't have to be within the confines of this box for it to work. So first off, I'm going to go down to Rendering Features, this tab right here, and we have a tab called Motion Blur. And Motion Blur, as you guys probably know, is how much it blurs out when we move our camera. So it's at a default of 0.5, and I can demonstrate by pressing play. When we kind of look left and right, things blur out just slightly. And if we put this to 0 and hit play, nothing blurs out at all. So it definitely feels choppier. Some people prefer it like that. And if we put it to 1, for example, everything gets really blurry when we move. A value I like is 0.7, and motion blur definitely is kind of a controversial thing among people who play games. So this is just for you to mess around with between the values of 0 and 1 and feel it and put in what you think feels right. 0.7 works just fine for me. So now let's go to where it says lens, and first thing we're going to mess with is bloom. Now bloom is used to kind of fringe out the edges of light to kind of give the effect of its brightness. And if we turn it way up, you can kind of see what it's doing. Of course, it is a low light scene. In some games, I like to turn it up more than the default, but since this is a horror game and it is supposed to be dark, I usually leave this. I would leave this as is. But once again, totally up to you. Next, we have chromatic aberration, because we already did exposure. And chromatic aberration is an effect to replicate refraction of light. So if we turn this all the way up, you can see it kind of separates the colors, which is kind of fun to play around with. Pretty nauseating if you were to just leave it like this at full strength. But I like to leave it just as a very subtle amount. So I will put it at 0.3. And it is almost completely... there's almost no difference, but just a little subtle thing that I like to add in. So next we have vignette. So if we go to image effects, vignette just adds darkness to the corners. It defaults at 0.4. If we were to take this down to 0, if you kind of look at the corners, you can see they brighten and darken as I change the scale. I'm going to turn it up a bit to 0.6, just to have that darkness on the edges. Grain, jitter, and intensity, you can choose if you want it to have a grainier look. If you don't, you can just leave these at 0. But I think I'll put the intensity up to something like 0.5. Or I'm sorry, the jitter up to 0.4, and then the intensity up to something like 0.5. And you can see if I change the intensity from 0 to 1, the grainy effect it has on our camera. So now we have a bit of grain, which is definitely a stylistic approach. 0.5 might actually be too much. Maybe I'll try something like 0.3. And the jitter down as well. I think I might have made it just a bit too much. So maybe 0.3 and 0.3. For depth of field, we're actually going to have a separate episode on that, so we're just going to skip it for now. Now if we go to film, we can change things such as the slope and toe, which just kind of changes brightness and darkness and things. So if we go to the slope and we turn this down, you can see it kind of gets, and we turn this down, it kind of lightens the highlights. So I'm going to turn this from 0.88, which is the default, to 0.6. The toe kind of darkens the shadows. I'm going to change this from 0.55 to 0.5, so just lighten it up just slightly. And then the shoulder can stay the same. So if I enable and disable the toe, you can see the difference right there. Same with the slope, which is a bit more of a difference. You can see it's a little easier to see in here now. You can definitely maybe not do it as much to help with the flashlight rule I was talking about when lighting the scene at all, but it's up to you. We also have other options like color grading, so you can change the white balance, the temperature if you want to make it darker or cooler. Not darker, warmer or cooler, sorry, but I'm not going to mess with that. Global color balance, so you can kind of give them tints, or oversaturate or undersaturate. It's a fairly black and white scene, so it's pretty hard to tell what's going on here because there's almost no color. But for the most part, I just wanted to clean some things up and make it just a bit more on theme for a horror game. So to show you the effects of the post-process volume on and off, I'm just going to toggle the unbound. So once I turn this back to bound, it'll only be in the effects of this square, but we'll be this cube, but we'll be outside of it. So this is what it looks like without the post-process. Very just normal, clean look. Very exposure comes up way too high. Very dark blacks and very light highlights. Then we turn it back on, and we have this grainier, darker vignette, lighting a bit more balanced look here. And post-process volumes are very powerful, and there's more that goes into it. I just wanted to go over a few things to really spice up the look of your game. So that's going to be it for this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.